What I'd like Reece to open with is really to dig into some of those challenges and look at the kind of macro trends and how they're kind of reshaping how maritime companies communicate today.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. There's not much going on in the world, is there really? It's pretty simple. I think that our industry and industries, all the ocean industries, are experiencing what I would call a bit of a convergence of disruption. Lots of different forces influencing our industry that has huge bearing on what we do as communicators. Changing information consumption patterns, which we're going to talk about a little bit later on, but what happens when the seafarer has access to the internet all the time? Do we need to communicate and think about how we communicate with them? Geopolitical tension. I'm sure everybody loves listening to the news right now. I do. It really helps me sleep well at night. Elevating our industry into the zeitgeist in a way that I think it's not quite used to doing. Is sea blindness a thing anymore when you can get a video of all sorts of incidents that are happening on the oceans? ESG, what that means for our industry. Does ESG mean anything for our industry? Is ESG the right term for what we have to do within our industry? But all of that meaning that data-backed evidence is more vital than ever. Regulatory complexity. I'd hate to be working, from the IMO over in Lambeth, because they've got a really tough job on their hands. And that, as communicators, means that we have a lot more stories that we have to tell. Consolidation, market consolidation, more private equity money in our industry, more competition for that private equity money. That really intensifies the need to have differentiated brand positioning and to really stand out amongst your competition. I knew I wouldn't be able to get through the first 5 minutes of this without quoting the great Martin Stopford, who has described the period that we're in as a bit of a super cycle. I know there are people in the audience, I can see some of you, that will be thinking that actually some of this volatility is really good for business, right? Volatility is generally good for business if you're prepared to be able to navigate it. The super cycle we're in at the minute, I think is, and Martin Stopford thinks, more importantly than what I think, Martin Stopford thinks that it is redefining what it even means to be a company in this market. And I think that has a huge bearing on us as communicators, because we're the ones that need to help tell that story.
The impact on media organisations from the change that we've described has to be significant. And one of the points there was talking around kind of from print to digital. I mean, how is the maritime media adapting to the decline of print, the rise of digital first engagement, and indeed is print dead?
Well, Tradewinds, as everybody knows, is a blue newspaper. We can't kill it, is the reality. We still ship thousands of blue newspapers around the world. But I think we have to recognise that the dynamic in this industry is changing, for sure. Lots of formats now, of course, digital, web, video, podcasts. And I think we have to be really careful, because I'm sure everybody's connected on LinkedIn. I'm sure if you go into your LinkedIn feed at the moment and you see everybody is shouting about #LISW. But speaking honestly, there's a lot of blur. How do you cut through the noise? And I think maritime media in particular helps to cut through the noise. We're the trusted voice, if you like. And what's really interesting is that our editorial teams, they're gathering the news, they're then interpreting the news. They're of course using data and analytics to support that. We have dashboards that tell us what's happening real time. We can see how many subscribers are reading articles. We can see what articles are converting subscribers. There's a great piece a press release that went out yesterday, which the reporters have picked up on, which was a major classification society CEO who slammed the IMO. I mean, everybody is questioning the IMO at the moment, but he's come out and said, stop, we need to reset. That's a really interesting story that's been published on Tradewinds and has picked up lots of traffic. And we're able to look at that traffic and then interpret it and use it to really enhance what we're offering. So the real answer, Mark, is print isn't dead, but there is definitely a place for lots and lots of other channels.
And the point you made around, I mean, again, you saw on the video, editors to algorithms. Are the algorithms deciding what people read now, or do the editors still have a degree of control?
I think the editors The editors decide what is interesting news. It's that trusted voice. You know, they're the guys that, because everybody can go out and pick up a press release, or you can get your news off social media, LinkedIn. But the algorithms help us to adapt that and make it a more interesting read. So we can A/B test headlines, we can A/B test pictures if we like, and then that drives engagement. And I think that's the critical bit.
Marit, from the client's perspective, from the customer's perspective, I mean, what pressures are driving this new approach to brand visibility and engagement?
There's quite a few. I think many in the room have some that are similar to what I'll mention. Reese touched on them. Change in consumer behavior is one of the big ones, of course, and across all industries in this digital landscape. We see the way people are taking in information is changed. HubSpot did a report, 2024 came with findings that 89% of users are looking for short-form video content from brands. They want faster messaging, 60-second clips are the most popular, and users are more likely to share video content than perhaps any other form of content. So really a shift in what type of content users are looking for and how fast they're consuming, of course. Coming from a business, an OEM that was working with engines and brochures and .coms, this is a huge transition for a lot of the maritime industry and a lot of companies. Then of course there's the clutter, the noise, the overpopulation of the digital places. All of that is needed, but how do you really take brand value? Users are looking to associate with brands that share values with them now. There's an emotional connection much more than before. So how do we take brand value and make that visible in that quick 60 seconds before somebody changes pages or puts their phone down to say goodnight to their kids? How do you bring that across quickly and have that resonating messaging? Something maybe more specific for brands in the maritime space, something I have really struggled with and talked with a lot of peers on is, I would say, somewhat the fragmentation of our industry. The maritime space is so vast and it's such a unique and tight community, but there are different regions, obviously. Shipping is a global business. There is regulation that changes based on which region you're in. Look at vessel segment type. You need to perhaps look at tailor making and targeting audiences that have different needs, different struggles and pain points in this decarbonization journey at the moment. So taking a look at how do we reach from one business that operates in this huge space, how do you target everybody and target crystal clear and well, and bring a resonating message that also brings your brand value. It's a heavy ask. Then you take a look at employer branding. That's also a piece of this communications picture for businesses. How do you bring in the best talent and attract them through those values? Promoting your R&D perhaps. How do you attract investors? Another huge discussion at the moment in the businesses. So again, it's a lot of content, it's a lot of messaging, and it really needs to be honed in and targeted. That's I think a huge pressure for our industry is the diverse messaging and the different layers that are needed there. One of the last ones I think is important to message on here as well, and given that this is a Marcoms community, is that I think there's a great pressure for businesses to look at what type of marketing and communication setup do we need? What can help feed this busy time, these digital channels, this hyper consumption? How many people do we need? How much can we rely on AI? It's a big task to look at marketing strategy. How do we target and market to the areas and the pockets where we'll do the best business? Or are we going to target everybody? And how will that resonate? So there's a lot of topics, a lot of discussions going on at the moment, and certainly some of those pressures.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've outlined some of the challenges that you face, but where are the opportunities in terms of harnessing this new digital landscape?
I love this question, and it's great to be part of the conversation preparing for this panel, and John mentioned some of this just in his bit too. In looking at discussing with PR firms, looking at agencies, which we all use in that Marcom space as well, looking at maybe underappreciated relationships with media. We all have the same audience, and with this digital landscape that we have now and these digital touch points, we're able to actually very proactively gather information, as John mentioned, on what are people reading. Which themes are resonating? which piece of news caught somebody's eye and created a stir and is driving a message where maybe crew is listening, maybe it's regulators that are listening. What can we find of these digital touch points and hone in and shape that conversation, and also start to look at shaping that conversation together?